All right, 93, everybody. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. My name is Frater Paradosis 951, and this is the third part of the series on the Thelemic differences between success, gain, and wealth. I come to you with great pleasure today to bring a perspective of wealth that differentiates success and gain and wealth from each other, but also brings a harmony to the three concepts that perhaps will assist you in accomplishing your will in the material world. So what I wanted to do was kind of step back in time a little bit and review the last two videos. I've been referencing the Book of Thoth written by the Master Therion, also known as Aleister Crowley. And this goes into the Egyptian tarot and the correspondences that he gave, which are incredibly in-depth and necessary. Goes into astrology and just a whole bunch of other correspondences. But as a reminder, here are the three tarot cards. The 10 of discs, wealth, the 9 of discs, gain, and the 6 of discs, which is success. So one interesting thing that I have noticed with both online tarot readings, in-person tarot readings, I've done tarot readings for people myself and also for myself. I think that there's no better way to know the cards intimately and for sure unless you do readings on yourself. I think that there are people that have really weird and superstitious notions that you shouldn't do tarot readings on yourself. That's just a bunch of devil dung. And the reason so is because how can you speak with authority if you don't have experience on something? Really, how can you be an authority if you don't have an original experience with something? So I have a real big problem with people that do tarot readings that have never done them on themselves, or at least aren't studying the cards to better understand themselves so that they can understand what's going on with somebody else. So for me, I use the cards more for meditational, contemplative purposes, for being conscious of what's going on in my environment and also within, because there's the fire cards, there's the water cards, there's the air cards, and the earth cards. And it could be said that the fire cards are your creative powers, the water are your emotional powers, the air are your verbal powers, and or intellectual rather, and then the earth, of course, is material world powers. And the cards do align to the Tree of Life diagram. If you've never studied that, highly encourage you to get the Book of Thoth. And it has the diagram inside there, shows you correspondences, and will give you a great head start into at least understanding yourself and the way that the different cards are balanced on the Tree of Life. And just for those that have studied the Tree of Life and to help inspire you to study it, the three cards that I brought up earlier are in the center pillar of the Tree of Life. So success, gain, and wealth are in the center pillar of the Tree of Life. This indicates harmony and balance when you embrace those. If you meditate on the cards to the left and right, you'll notice that they're not in balance with the middle pillar per se. However, they are necessary. You don't want to ignore them. For instance, worry. You don't want to ignore worry. Sometimes you should worry. And so these cards can have a active and passive role. So sometimes it's showing you how to combat something Or sometimes it's showing you a card to use as an active force where you should be using that force. So in that regard, the 10 of Discs, wealth, the Master Therion, he definitely refers to this as the material world. As a matter of fact, he makes a joke about the materialist school of science. He calls it the materialist school of science. If you step back and think about that, he's implying that there is an observable way to obtain wealth that can be repeated. And a lot of people make the mistake of meditating upon this card and taking away the true gem of it, because he talks about that wealth marks the futility of material gain, the futility of having. So it doesn't mean that gain can't be used to become wealth. So it's more implying that, actually. It's more implying redevoting your resources so that you can obtain an exponential growth in what you have. And so this brings the ironic principle of giving or investing. See, with wealth is only obtainable by investing and giving. Sometimes you have to give away a product or service in order to let people experience it for themselves, just to build trust, and then they will buy either the next level of what you offer or whatever it is that you are offering. So let's bring this into focus with business strategies, because I consider business strategies to be that middle bridge between success and wealth. In the previous two videos, I've distinguished success and gain. And so now let's think of it like this. Business strategies are how to gain, but then how to take that gain so that you don't lose it, because obviously at some point you're going to want to spend. And so you either have two extremes, either completely save everything or spend everything. Now I'm going to admit that I am a spender. I love spending. And we're approaching the year 2017. And over the past 2 years, I have become more disciplined and focused so that I'm not as obsessed with spending. And that is just a discipline thing that has to be acquired. But one thing that I do, even if I have very little money in the bank account, is I invest. Do I always get a return? No, I don't. But does it become a learning experience? Yes. And I think the greatest satisfaction or reward is what I consider successful investment, which means that success being the progressive revelation of your worthy ideal, your nonconformist ideal, you're investing in your own idea. And so investing is not necessarily money per se. This can be time. This can be resources. And so what I want to get into is that money can be wealth. Profits or gain can be money. And success can be related to money. But let's not think in terms of money right now. Let's think in terms of what's called an asset. An asset would be anything that you own that you can transform into something else that you want. So back in the good old days when there was no money and everything was a barter system, you had a cow and somebody else had a chicken. And you had to come to an agreement with the chicken owner of how many chickens is the equivalent to your cow. But with alchemy and with the creativity of emperors, such as a Chinese emperor, when money and cash was made in China out of nothing, they decided to create an alchemical third element that would serve as a fluid exchange between possessions. And as society evolved, people became entrepreneurial and they started inventing their own ideas. And with that, they needed a way to come up with a more common ground to decide value. And that just happens to be money. But there are many ways to determine value. It's just that people have discovered that money is the most fluid form of exchange to be able to quickly agree, so that instead of saying, oh, my cow is worth 7 of your chickens, then the chicken owner can already have a predetermined price of the chickens, and the cow owner can have a predetermined price for the cow. And what that does is it allows each to have stability, to have an asset, so that there's an equal value no matter who is approaching them. And this brings fairness to the economy, because, not every chicken owner is going to think his chicken is worth the same, the cow doesn't equal the same amount of chickens. However, this is where value and being able to promote what you feel the benefits are to other people of what you offer. And so, yes, in modern times, money is the most common form of exchange. And so what you have to decide, if you have a consulting service of some sort, if you have a service where you are performing the work, or if you have a product where it's basically pre-made. Those three things are basically the three types of value that can be offered to the world. You have a service, you have consultation, and you have a product. So basically, all of you that have ever come up with a great idea, your idea falls into one of those three categories and probably blends the categories together. But think of this. You might be at the bottom totem pole when it comes to your idea. And at the bottom of the totem pole is generalization. And then more at the top is somebody who is an authority on what it is that they are projecting forth. So if you are not yet an authority, which means you are not yet original, or you are not, you're not an entrepreneur that has risen out of the generalization of things. Like, for instance, I play an instrument, I play piano, but there's a million pianists in the world. So for me to come forth and say, I'm a pianist, that really doesn't do anything for me at all. All that does is let people know, oh yeah, he's a pianist. I know a bunch of pianists. However, if I were to say, I am a pianist that writes my own original music and I don't play any cover songs without permission from the artist, boom, I just set myself apart, and now I can advertise my value based on that. And so you are going to have to come up with a way to show people the value of what you offer, so that you can also decide how many people do you have to reach and how many times do you have to reach them to get to a financial goal. And you might even have to come up with a way to distribute what it is that you offer, which means collaborating with people and companies that are going to be able to do that for you. So with wealth, and when it comes to money, it would take time to acquire. Now, I do want to back up to the idea of an asset, because an asset is anything that can be transformed into something else that you want. Most of you, that's going to be money. So you might have a house, a car. The car has value. The house has value. However, you also have knowledge. And knowledge has value. I think it could be argued that King Solomon basically sold some of his Kabbalistic secrets to in exchange for money. I don't know for sure that it was the knowledge of Kabbalah that he gave, but he gave his great wisdom, which I'm very certain was related to the Kabbalah, and perhaps he gave intuition, more like a seer, so that when the Queen of Sheba came to him, he maybe knew things about her life or was able to impart wisdom for ruling better that caused her to want to give him assets. And so he was technically a consultant. And so he became the wealthiest person of his time through consulting that other people discovered valuable. And so I just want to encourage you today to do your great work towards getting that value to that spot where you're not a generalist anymore, where you really can set yourself apart and show why what you offer is a ton more valuable than anybody else, and then you have the grounds to build up wealth. You may have to invest your last penny, you may have to be poor for years and years and years and years and years, but at least you know that you are digging the soil, tilling the soil, and you're planting seeds that will reap a harvest for years to come and possibly be a legacy for future generations. All right. Love is the law. Love under will.